you're in the whole 6010.
Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus Football presented by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. My name is Daniel Dopp here with Mike Clay, and we'll see if Field Yates makes a field. Are you alive, buddy? Did you survive yesterday?
Sort of. It's a long 24 hours, people. I have some advice for the masses out there. Don't do the Hot Ones challenge. Just don't do it.
I don't know. I'm fine.
You know what, Mike?
I can't stand you right now for saying that.
I agree with that.
Yesterday was an unquestionable. I've had some interesting health things of late, guys. I need to start thinking about the longevity of my life ahead, because in the past 2 weeks I have wrecked my shoulder and then wrecked my stomach.
Yes,
guys.
Accurate.
If you had seen me walking out of the ESPN parking lot yesterday to my car, you would have thought that somebody had punched me in the stomach. Like, there was a couple of people that were walking by, and I think they were sort of like, it's one of those situations where you want to go over and ask someone if they need help, but you're also a little bit weary of going over and asking them if they need help and then be like, I'm fine. I don't need help. Right? And there's a reason why we have every medicine known to mankind currently on the desk, because I went through it yesterday.
Oh man, I feel so bad. Was it clenched cheeks the entire way? Was that the kind of, or was it stomach problems?
You know, I'm gonna
come on, Field. Come on, the people want to know.
Friendly, but yeah, there was I might have lost some weight yesterday.
Okay,
put it that way.
All right.
I don't know. He was talking kind of a big game before that third chip.
Yeah, he really was. Didn't he tell you were a baby if you couldn't handle it?
I don't know. I think we maybe have some footage. No?
Do we have some footage?
Some footage of
maybe let's check it out.
Smack talk?
Do we have some footage?
Maybe.
We're going to do some fantasy hot takes, guys.
Mike, if you can't handle this, you're the biggest baby alive.
Oh, man. What happens when he can't handle it?
A few minutes later.
Oh, this is the last dab. This is the one that everyone cries at.
Oh, no. Don't 10 of 10 heat level.
Oh, my God. This is way worse than the shoulder.
Okay.
Oh, no, don't tell me that.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry.
Love it.
Oh, hold on a second here.
All right, which I'm scared.
You suggested this segment for what it's worth, Field.
Why do people do this to themselves?
I don't know. Oh, wow. Well, that's not how the game works. Mike, you're going to have to do it as well. This one is a tough one. We ask questions during it.
I'll do mine now because
I'm kind of bummed, only because I really liked that last hot take. Like, Alan Lazard's going to outscore Mike Williams.
I mean, I think
Jalen Polk is going to outscore both of them.
I think you deserve it for making a Lazard take. I think that's really what happened to your stomach. You had to say positives about Alan Lazard's fantasy stock, and it just went right to your stomach.
Yeah,
but you're that's what happened. On board with half the prediction.
But what wasn't actually shown there was only a little hint of your smack talk to me throughout the first two chips. I actually rewatched this last night because, I'm a professional. I watch the tape after the show. Of course. You got to take notes. You got to improve your game a little bit. And I was like, man, this guy's really, you were giving it to me yesterday. It was nonstop. And I'm like, wow, I knew it was coming at that point. So
that's so good. If at any point you need any of the things that you brought, Field, just go ahead, interrupt the show.
On our deck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We got a huge show today. Obviously, we got a Thursday Night Football preview. We got a Week 1 preview of a bunch of different games, especially from Mike's Playbook. We're going to dive into a bunch of stuff. By the way, speaking of Mike's Playbook and wide receiver cornerback, both of them available on ESPN Plus. One of the best things that you can grab heading into the fantasy football season. A bunch of great content on there. Those are just two of them, Mike, but go check it out.
Appreciate it.
ESPN Plus is fantastic. All right, let's get things kicked off with the opening drive. Veterans League is back, my friends.
Yeah, baby.
I got a 16-team league. I ended up getting a handful of players that I was unsure of. I unfortunately auto-drafted the first 4 rounds, which was a mistake.
Yeah, you were driving back home from work.
Yeah.
You were safe. That was the prudent thing to do.
You don't want to draft and drive. Exactly. Yes. And so in a 16-team league, it was like, how quickly can I get home? I did not draft any running backs in the first 4 rounds. I, in fact, drafted a couple of wide receivers I wouldn't have drafted. But you know what? It's just the roster you start with. It's not the roster you end with. That's the thing that we're told. So very excited, though, to be able to kick off another season of the Veterans League. We didn't just bring everyone back that was in the league last year. We didn't eliminate anybody, but a bunch of new names went into a pool so that we could have some more opportunities to play with different people. So very excited about that. But Veteran League drafts should be all wrapped up now.
Yeah, they should. Well, I guess you could probably still draft until Sunday morning, but most drafts likely done by now. 16-team league, as Daniel mentioned, so it always makes things quite interesting. I always laugh when I look at my flex spot in a 16-team league. You're like,
I know.
Wait, hold on. I'm starting. Wait, am I literally starting Josh McCown at slot receiver this week in my flex spot? Like, is that possible? He's been retired. He's now a coach.
Yeah, it is wild. I actually got I did mine a few nights ago. And Puka Nacua went like the end of the first round, and then coming back in round 2, I took Derrick Henry, and then the guy who took Nacua waited a long time at running back, and he was worried about running back, so he offered me after the draft Nacua and Najee Harris for Derrick Henry. And again, Nacua went before Henry. I was like,
I'll take that.
Yes, immediately, because
you don't love the troops.
What?
Wow.
You don't love the troops. I mean, Daniel's a veteran. Defend the honor here.
Here's the problem. It's hard for me to defend the honor when they're the one that sent the trade. If they send over the trade.
I mean, the league, it was in the chat, and the league was like, no, that's fine. Like, they were all like, no, I would have taken that too. I was like, why didn't you take Henry first?
That's a great question.
I don't know, but I'll take it. But you know what? My starting lineup didn't get substantially better, but I added a little depth, which is so important in this 16-team league, just having those additional options. So, but now I took Cooper Kupp as well. So I have Rams receivers, which is
are you allowed to take old guys like that on your team? Is that in 16-team leagues? Do you have different rules?
He fell just enough.
So,
my liking.
I'm okay with the trade. Fine, I'll allow it. Mine. That was decent. But this is going to be awesome. Like very, very, very cool thing that we do. Very, very, grateful to be a part of the Veterans League again this year. And just a reminder, 3 teams from each 16-team league advance to a tournament-style play.
Yep.
It's going to be in the final few weeks of the season. This was all spelled out in an email that you received as part of the invite into the league. So go check that if you want the full details of it. And it's going to get wacky, and we are going to pay this off. That, like, hold me to this, all right? Because I felt like that was an area in which we let you down. Was we needed to talk about the winner more last year. Mm-hmm. We will talk about the winner more this year because that person deserves her or his moment in the sun.
100%. Totally with you on that. I unfortunately, and maybe not unfortunately, but in the first round, because I was driving, my very first round pick was a guy that I just said on SportsCenter and yesterday in the show, probably will not draft in the first round, and yet I auto-drafted Jamar Chase. So you know what? I'm hoping now that he comes back. But, hey, we got news. Let's talk about this. We got news on Jamar Chase back at practice yesterday, Field. You had said earlier in this week or later last week that you were going to reserve your thoughts until maybe you hear from Jamar himself. Even though he didn't say anything with his words, did his actions give you enough to make you feel a little bit more comfortable?
Here is the reality. If there was zero progress whatsoever, these two sides were at a deadlock, a standstill, and there was zero opportunity to meet in the middle, Jamar Chase would not have been on the practice.
I think you're right.
Now,
I think you're right.
Is a deal done? No. Because if a deal was done, then this would be announced either by one of the national reporters, probably Shefty, or by the team itself.
Yep.
So we're not done yet, but I think we're trending in a reasonable direction that makes me feel good about saying this. And this is as far as I will go. Is if a Jamar Chase deal is not done by Sunday, I think it gets done in relative short order. I think there's a very reasonable chance, assuming health, that you have 16 games of Jamar Chase at minimum. I feel good about that part. And if you get 16 games of Jamar Chase, Mike, that probably is right around, I don't know, wide receiver 4 or 5 for the season.
Yeah, no doubt. Because remember, if you don't have him week 1, you don't get a 0. You still can fill someone in. And it's probably receiver so deep.
In a 10-team league,
Chase,
it could be
especially in
Deontay Johnson.
Or Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, someone like that. That's fine for 1 week because then you still get Jamar Chase. And frankly, you might get a discount of a few picks right now. So would you say you got him at 9?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a major discount, but you probably wouldn't have gotten them there a week or 2 ago.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, I feel fairly comfortable drafting him around that range right now. I took a couple days ago, I took Justin Jefferson over him, but that's fine. We all have them guys in the same tier. So if you want to bump him to the back of that tier with Jefferson, Amon-Ra, those kind of guys, totally fine. But past that, I wouldn't go. I'd take him over AJ Brown, guys like that.
Yeah, big thing that you guys both said is like because it's week 1, you have plenty of options. If you do draft him and he doesn't play, you can go ahead and slot somebody else in there. It's not like it's going to crush you for week 1. All right. What about Kyle Pitts, guys? Saw that there was a Kyle Pitts injury. I was pumped. I mean, I had heard rumors coming out of training camp. He's going to play both wide receiver and tight end, lining up at both spots. It feels like this is the year. Right. Well, we'll see how that works. But does this give you any trepidation? I know we're going to continue to monitor this. We'll watch things. Stefania's going to come out on Friday, and as well as Fantasy Football Now every single Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN2. We'll see what we get for injury updates there. But any trepidation on Kyle Pitts?
No. He said basically, like, I'm good. Just a reminder, sort of for those that don't study injury reporting rules meticulously, If a player misses 1 rep as a result of an injury, if he is limited by 1 rep, he is listed as a limited participant.
Okay.
Right? So you could be 99% of a participant, but you still have to be listed as limited. So it sounds like this is much more on the precautionary side. The team is responsible to report every injury, is obligated to do so. I think we're all fine. But I think it does bring up this very interesting dynamic surrounding Kyle Pitts. Fairly or unfairly, every time something happens with Kyle Pitts that's at all newsworthy, it is going to elicit a much stronger reaction than anybody else.
Yeah.
If Kyle Pitts comes out in week 1 and has 7 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown, it is going to be the I told you so revenge tour, right? If Kyle Pitts comes out in week 1 and goes 2 catches, 18 yards, no touchdowns, it's going to be, I did it again.
Yep.
I fell for it. I took the cheese. Everybody told me don't draft Kyle Pitts again, and I did it because I'm stubborn.
Yeah.
So so when an injury pops up to Kyle Pitts, like if, as an example, I'm just totally making this up. If Chris Godwin were limited yesterday with a hamstring injury, like I don't think anybody would have said, "Oh wow, like Chris Godwin, like major concern here," right?
Chris
It's
Godwin.
like I wonder what's going on there.
Right.
Like, well, but it's Kyle Pitts, so he is going to elicit stronger reactions than I don't know about any player in the NFL, but certainly on the short list.
Pretty darn close.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, we use them same injury rules. That's why Field was listed as limited.
Limited today.
Yeah, he was limited yesterday, I guess. So we listed him as questionable for today's podcast, but he made it.
I gotta be consistent these next few days here. Is I will unlikely be around for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week's podcast.
It's weird. Those are the ones I'm on. He scheduled.
Oh,
Yes.
crazy,
Those ones.
crazy.
Yep. So I actually was trying to see if I could do surgery every week until the season was over on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. They didn't allow that.
Surgery is preferred to.
It's like, can I just do one portion of it? Like, can you make this surgery an 18-part procedure and we'll just start, I guess, 17-part procedure starting next week?
I love that. Yes. I think, honestly,
Week 1, I'll get the anesthesia. And then week 2.
that works. More videos of you from your wife with medication is okay with me. I'll never say no to that. All right. We got a Thursday Night Football preview and a bunch more. So right now we're going to lay out. Let's talk about, you want to talk about something else?
Pick'em League?
You want to talk about, let's talk about the Pick'em League.
Yeah. So just if everyone wants to join in, right? Pigskin Pick'em is back.
Absolutely. It is back. If you go through and join a Pigskin Pick'em League, you go through, make all your picks. At the end, it'll ask you, do you want to create a league or join a league? If you say join a league, Fantasy Focus is near the top. I think we're in the top 7 of leagues. So it's very easy for us to be able to find. Yeah.
The logo and everything there. So you should, I think it's like SportsCenter has a group, NFL and ESPN has a group, and then the Pigskin Pick'em Fantasy Focus group. Whoever wins, again, big shout out at the end of the year. We'll be better about paying that stuff off. So yes, please check out the Fantasy Focus Pigskin Pick'em. It is a public league, free to join, get in, and that's my thought.
5th league listed there.
I'm in there.
Group.
I'm in there. I was in there weeks ago.
But
I'm way out in front.
Straight up picks, no lines, no nothing,
we're not
just
doing
straight
lines.
up, just who's winning,
That's how I like
Chiefs or Ravens.
All right. Let's get into this then and with a little Thursday Night Football preview. Chiefs and Ravens. Guys, we're starting
today.
So many people from this game also for what it's worth.
We almost forgot to lead with that at the top because we were so excited to make fun of Field that we just forgot about
There's
that.
football tonight.
Now we could look forward.
Football tonight.
There's a game today. It's pretty
Football
fun.
tomorrow.
Sunday, I'm going to go sledding with my daughters and just roll my ankle. And Mike and Daniel are going to be like, who cares about the Super Bowl?
Exactly. Yeah.
Field's got a
you
first
understand.
aid kit on him right now. Yeah.
That is good stuff.
All right, let's talk about these guys. There's a bunch of people you're starting from this one. I want to talk about the guys that maybe we have some question marks on. Zay Flowers, let's start there. Ended the season fantastic last year. Had a really great rookie season. Mike, when you look at Zay Flowers, week 1, taking on this Chiefs defense, any reason why you wouldn't be starting Zay Flowers? Is there a reason why he wouldn't at least be a flex play for your squad?
No, he's 18th for me. I like and I know you're with me on this. And I know Tyler's with me on this because I did EBL yesterday.
Yep.
The overs for the Ravens passing game because we expect them to be throwing a lot. And I was looking at that last year. Games where the Ravens are underdogs or lose, a lot of passing yards from Lamar Jackson, a lot of yardage from Zay Flowers last season. 6 games where the Ravens were an underdog or lost last year. Zay Flowers had 70+ yards in 5 of those 6 games. He already had almost a quarter of the targets as a rookie last year. And again, his best games, again, when they were underdogs or losing, but also down the stretch, he finished up really strong for them. If this was the same Chiefs defense as last year, you might say, we might try the L'Jarius Sneed shadow on the perimeter. That might be a little bit of a detriment. He's now on the Tennessee Titans. It's possible Trent McDuffie, they're going to play him outside this year. It's possible they use him as a shadow corner in place of Sneed, but we don't know that for sure. So I'm not going to let that affect my rankings much. I think Flowers should be locked in.
Just be curious here. I have him ranked 22nd, so I'm same territory as you guys. Mike, this is sort of a fantasy conversation because it definitely can impact wide receivers' values. You think McDuffie will do the shadowing this year?
I think there's a chance. I think it's
He's an interesting player as a shadow guy too, because this was an elite slot corner. This is an elite slot corner. He was a first-team All-Pro as kind of that nickelback last year.
Not this year.
Who will play on the perimeter now. But I do wonder if they draw a team who has a dominant slot receiver, could we see Trent McDuffie shadow that player? Meanwhile, if they're playing a guy who's a more conventional perimeter receiver like an A.J. Brown, he actually wouldn't be shadowed, which is usually the inverse.
It's possible, but generally teams will take their corners and put them in a spot and they stay there. Yeah. Even shadow corners, guys that shadow every single week. We're going to talk about a lot of them throughout the next 2 days and throughout the season. Even when they're shadowing, they will not go into the slot when the player lines up in there. So if Drake London's in the slot, a third of the time, he's not going to be shadowed by that one Joey Porter this week when he's inside. So that could be the case with McDuffie if they said, all right, all off season, you're practicing on the perimeter. You're now a perimeter corner. And then, Connor, the youngster is supposed to be the slot guy this year, the nickel in the slot. So, but they also don't have the 1-2 punch like they had last year with Snead and McDuffie. So maybe they get a little more creative. It is possible, Field. It's not something I expect, though. It just isn't. I don't even know if he's in a shadow for sure.
Yeah, it's at all. We shall see. Yeah, I mean, L'Jarius Sneed was he had a terrific and just a generational year last year.
Unbelievable season.
That's part of McDuffie's success too, was the fact that he wasn't on ones because he was inside and Sneed had the hard workload on the perimeter. I mean, he was great. Don't get me wrong, but it helps when you're not facing that number one heavily targeted player every week. Sneed was awesome last year.
What about on the other side with Rashee Rice? I've said it a couple times, but when you look at the second half of the season, weeks 12 through 17, he was wide receiver 4, almost a 28% target share. That was quite a bit more than Travis Kelce. He looked like the number one pass catcher in this offense. Field, how are you feeling about him week 1 going up against its Ravens defense?
I do the Field's favorites piece every year, and Zay Flowers is on it. Rashee Rice, I thought about, it was just so hard to make that case when there was the possibility of him being suspended, and truthfully, and I don't know, maybe people feel like I'm sounding holier than thou when I say this, but I thought the behavior this offseason was obviously irresponsible. It just felt weird being like, I'm all in on this guy who made some really curious decisions this past offseason. But what I will say is when he's on the field, I do feel very, very strongly about what kind of season is in store for Rashee Rice. Mike has opined that the Chiefs' offense is going to look quite a bit different this year, and I agree with that take. It's going to be much more vertically inclined, and it might mean less of Rashee Rice with the 229th lowest, or I guess highest ADOT last year.
Yeah.
But I think he has that in the bag. Like, I don't think that Rashee Rice is the kind of player who needed to play that style of play last year to be a really effective fantasy player. I've got him inside my top 20 this week, number 18 to be specific. You guys are both a little bit lower.
Yeah, I'm a little bit lower. More mouths to feed now in the Kansas City offense.
Hollywood Brown is going to be out for this one.
Yeah, he will be out. That helps. That helps Rice a little bit. I think it helps Worthy more and gets a third receiver on the field. I'm just curious because he was very reliant on short range, where a heavy workload in the short range, a lot like you see from like a number 3 slot receiver, a number 2 slot receiver, where it's all in the short range and can limit touchdowns, that kind of thing. But he got so many 9-10 targets a game down the stretch last season because they had no one else. Does that sustain is kind of my question this year. But again, I'm ranking him 23rd. He's still a guy that should be in lineups. Yeah.
I do hear really good things about Rashee Rice. Now, you got to put it into action in this new offense. But yeah, I do hear good things. Just a quick note. You made me think of this, Daniel, with the Hollywood Brown mention. And we get these tweets all the time. And so I just want to kind of address it early, is that just because if a reporter reports that someone is going to be out for a game, until that player's team officially declares him out, the service that we use for our game designations will not change that player to out.
Correct.
So a couple days ago, Andy Reid suggested Hollywood Brown would be out for the game on Thursday night. Yesterday, they declared him out. So, no, you can't make a player an out. You cannot list him as out when he hasn't been officially declared out, because we have seen guys go into the week as doubtful per the team, out per reporter, and then play in the game on Sunday. So I get it. People are frustrated. They couldn't make a move by moving Hollywood Brown to IR, but you have to have parameters in place to protect against a thing that is real, which is a team being not confident about a player playing, and then him being out there on Sunday.
Having them rebound and be able
happens.
to, yeah.
By the way, the service we use is outstanding with that. They don't miss. Like they get it right every time. So if you see a guy listed as doubtful and not out, and you think you heard he was out, they got it right. The team has not declared the player out. Also, we don't control that. I know sometimes like you guys get tired. Like tell Mike to change the guy to out or something. We don't do that.
We don't do that.
I'll change the projections, but we don't change the the designation.
You at least have my sign off to yell at Mike whenever you want about anything.
That's
like
fair.
if you had a bad
That's
breakfast,
always.
you can always tweet Mike about that. But specific to the game designations, sadly, Mike is not responding.
That's all fine with me.
Let me ask you guys about Derrick Henry really quickly. I've got him listed as running back 8. He was drafted as a top 10 running back, but he's just outside the top 10 for you guys. Is that just because of the Chiefs front? Is there a reason why he's outside the top 10, Mike?
Also,
I don't have a super strong take here other than Baltimore is going to be probably throwing it a little bit more. So that might be it.
I was going to say, Mike mentioned earlier about how much Zay Flowers
I think that
could
might
see
take
some
away.
work. Yeah.
If they're trailing, Justice Hill might be playing a lot more than you think in the second half. That's the only.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like there are a lot of players that we're starting in this game. And just a reminder going into the season again, like if we haven't talked about a player that is obvious, you're probably starting him, right? Like we're not talking about Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews because you're starting those guys.
You're starting them.
FYI.
Without question.
But what I will say is that this game obviously involves a lot of potential fantasy stars. This could be a grinded out game tonight. 2 of the best defenses in all of football last season. Baltimore probably had more change this offseason than Kansas City. L'Jarius Sneed, obviously a big part of it, but there were some serious defections from Baltimore around the NFL this past offseason. So I could see this being a slightly lower scoring game than people might hope because football is back and points are sexy.
Do you think there's a player? Do you have a player in mind? Maybe you don't right now. I'm just asking this because I think mine comes from this game. The player that's going to be like the hot waiver ad after week 1?
Justin Watson. I'm being funny.
It does have to be from this game, but I have one from this game. While you're thinking about it, mine's Rashad Bateman. Does it happen for him this year?
Interesting.
I was thinking more about, and like we've been aware of this, so we've talked about it through the offseason, but he really does have a good opportunity here to be a featured target. Like this is it. This is his shot. And there's been a lot of, I want to say somewhat quiet hype there in Baltimore. Like they don't need another receiver because they got this guy. He's ready to go. We just got to get him the ball more sort of thing. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, especially because if Flowers is on McDuffie a lot, you might see him away for, young guys like Jalen Watson, maybe he makes some plays. So I'm monitoring him and I'm very excited for Xavier Worthy too. It would not shock me if he has a 52-yard touchdown tonight.
But that was what we discussed a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
As well. It was like, if the first play of the game is a deep shot to Xavier Worthy, color me not stunned.
No, not at all.
Let's pick this game. If you're going to take it as a part of your pigskin pick 'em, I'm going with the Ravens.
Going with the Chiefs.
Oh, upset.
Yeah.
Your Lions beat them in week 1 last year. I'm going Chiefs. So I got the Chiefs. Yeah.
All right. Well, in this game, ESPN bet, Mike, you and I put together a 3-leg parlay. We got a couple of different options for you. I took a Derrick Henry anytime touchdown as a part of this play. Excuse me. We also have Derrick Henry over 6.5 receiving yards and Zay Flowers. Mike, you mentioned it earlier if there's potentially going to be trailing. Zay Flowers over 50 receiving yards as well. Odds were plus 360. Now they're at plus 475. Remember, ESPN bet 21 over for sports betting. All right, let's talk week 1 preview for some of the rest of these teams. Cowboys and Browns.
How
I gotta
about
start
'em?
here.
Yep.
When we look at this team, for the Cleveland Browns, Mari Cooper is a low-end flex play in my estimation. When we look at this, the real question for me is Jerome Ford. If you waited at the running back spot, he's one of these guys you could have gotten very late in your draft. Is he a flex consideration against the Dallas Cowboys this week?
Yeah, my rank doesn't totally reflect that yet, but that's the truth. That's where I should be. I have him ranked more like where I have him ranked going into the season, accounting for the possibility of Nick Chubb eventually being back in the fold or maybe Jerome Ford ceding some work to other players in that backfield. But yes, he's a reasonable top 30-ish option at running back this week. He's going to be the starter, and I think that, we saw last year what he could do. It was pretty boring, but
Not spectacular, but it can be steady.
he reminds me of, it's like him, Chuba Hubbard, maybe one of the Chargers backs, all kind of in that same territory where like they're innings eaters at running back.
How many top 25 fantasy weeks he had last year? Which again is like get you like flex numbers. How many top 25 weekly finishes Jerome Ford had last year?
2.
7?
12.
12
top 25s. He was just not a lot of spectacular weeks, but just solid, right? So you took this guy late in your draft knowing Nick Chubb was going to be out for a while. He's just a serviceable flex option, maybe a fringe RB2 for the next month or so.
It was like what Alexander Madison was at the beginning of last season. It wasn't good enough relative to what we hoped for going into the year, but it also wasn't like devastatingly bad. Yeah. It was like he wasn't like RB 72 consistently. It was that he was between like RB 24 and RB 29 way too much.
You're gonna get like 12.2 points or something, and that might be fine.
That's okay.
On what your roster looks
exactly.
Like.
What about Dak Prescott? We've mentioned this a couple of different times. Like, is this a game where even though you drafted Dak to be your starting quarterback against these Cleveland Browns, Mike, you've got him projected much lower than a lot of these other guys. Are you sitting Dak Prescott?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to try to. If I have an option that's close, we've talked about this throughout this week, like a Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, guy like that, a fringe guy with a good matchup, I'm okay with it. I think you're going to be hard-pressed. You probably didn't draft a better option, but if I have an excuse to bench him, I will. Last year, the Browns allowed the lowest EPA as a defense, the fourth fewest fantasy points to the two quarterbacks. And I don't always lean into stats from last year, but guys, they're returning their top 8 snap getters from last season. Every Brown defender that played 600 plus snaps last year is still on the roster and in the starting lineup. And that doesn't even include like someone like Zadarius Smith. Like they have other talent. Jordan Hicks, who they brought in at linebacker. So, and how about this? Last year, one quarterback reached 17.5 fantasy points in Cleveland last year. It was Lamar Jackson. He had 2 rushing touchdowns that allowed him to get there. So this is a very tough matchup, as tough as it gets for a quarterback in week 1.
So I wanted to be dismissive of this question because I said how, like, generally speaking, week 1 is going to be reflective of how I feel about the players going into the season, less about what I think of the matchup specifically in the first week. One thing that I've noticed, though, is we talk often about how when we do drafts amongst the fellow ESPN fantasy analysts, so few of them go big early on quarterbacks, and pretty much nobody drafts 2 quarterbacks.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. In pretty much every other league that I play in, everybody drafts 2.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So there is a possibility that you took Dak and then you doubled up, I guess, at quarterback by taking a Caleb Williams, as Mike mentioned, maybe even a Baker Mayfield or Geno Smith.
In a 10-team league, it could be like Brock Purdy or Jordan Love. I mean, it's certainly. Yeah.
So while I have Dak as quarterback, quarterback 12 this week. So like there are 11 superior options and then 20 inferior options to Dak. So it's pretty cut and dry here. If you're wondering whether I would play Dak or your quarterback, go to the rankings and find it specifically.
Yeah, check it out there.
But Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, 2 quarterbacks that I do have ranked ahead of Dak Prescott this year.
By the way, as a part of this, Ezekiel Elliott, not really a flex play for us this week, coming up against that difficult Browns defense. If there's any way you can not play him,
who's their lead back? We don't know that for sure. He's listed as the starter. There's stories that Rico Dowdle's going to have a massive role, could lead the team in carry. So I'm not too excited about Zeke either.
All right. Who are you taking? Cowboys or Browns?
Man, this is like the hardest.
Tom Brady. The game is in Cleveland.
Cleveland, yeah. I'm gonna go.
And did you know that Brady's on the call? This is the debut of Tom Brady. I will go with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Browns at home too. This was maybe the toughest to call.
I'm gonna take I believe I took the Dallas Cowboys in this one. I'm gonna take Dallas. All right, let's move on. Panthers and Saints, guys. Not a lot of names in this offense, other than the ones that are very obvious for us to be able to start. When you're talking about for the Panthers, my big question, just like we had for the Cleveland Browns, is Chuba Hubbard. Is he a guy that is worth being started in your flex, Mike, given what everything that the Saints defense is?
I'm a pinch lower, but it's the same kind of analysis as Ford. He should be the starter. We don't know. It's a new coaching staff. Miles Sanders could play more than we expect, but Hubbard just kind of ran away with that job last year. 11 plus fantasy points in 7 straight games to end the season. Sanders also, I believe he just left practice too yesterday.
Foot injury.
Should only help Hubbard a little bit. We have him ranked outside the top 30. I mean, in a deeper league, a flex option, it's fine. The Saints have been really good against running backs during the Dennis Allen era, which we don't want to completely ignore. So you see the projection, 11.5. He's probably going to be, I don't think that variance is too wide there. It's probably going to be around that number.
Yeah, I mention this often. Like when you're thinking about different size leagues, it can influence how you feel about a player. In a 10-team league, he's a very useful RB3 or RB4, right? Yep. He'll be there in your bye weeks for your top 2 guys. In a deeper league, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, he's fine. Like, he's pretty boring, but he's going to see a lot of work this year. And while we all want to see Jonathan Brooks on the field ASAP, this team's bad. Mm-hmm. Like, would you be stunned if they were like, yeah, it's week 12 and Jonathan Brooks is debuting now? Nope. I wouldn't be.
Not at all. Not at all. If they took it slow, Want to make sure that they don't re-injure their running back.
November ACL tear.
Yeah, exactly.
And we also know, Stefan has highlighted this a million times, the inefficiency of backs coming off their ACL tear in that first year is real.
On top of that, he's going to have to learn the NFL game kind of on the fly as a part of this because he didn't get, all the training camp and everything that we thought about. So.
My only Saints thought is the Saints apparently, and I know this is a tale as old as time, but new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak apparently has been getting very creative with our friend Taysom Hill. So I'll be interested to see whether we actually see that on Sunday. It might annoy some people, but he's a talented football player. He just often takes away fantasy points from the people that you want to get them, like Alvin Kamara or potentially Chris Olave.
Which is frustrating. You
said it, not me.
We'll see how that works out. Deontay Johnson, also a fine flex play in this one if you need to use him. Who are you taking in this one? Panthers or Saints, Mike?
I'll take Saints. I think the Panthers are a little better than people think, but not. I think in New Orleans is kind of the tiebreaker here.
Yeah, I'm going Saints as well. All right, next up, Steelers and Falcons. Here's the real question. You've been drafting Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, again, in this like RB dead zone, right? If you waited, they might be a low-end RB2 for you, or you might have gotten them as an RB3, right? You're in a spot where, do you think they're at least worth potentially using as a flex if you need them this week?
Think of Chuba Hubbard and then like take them up 1 or 2 notches.
Just a notch.
Right? I think that Jalen Warren may wind up having steadier value week over week because his passing game role is so legit. He was amongst the running back leaders in catches and targets last season, maybe quietly. I think Najee Harris is the one who's going to have a better chance on a week in and week out basis for 20 fantasy points because he's the one that's going to get the goal line work. He's just, talk about dissimilarities. This is not Mark Ingram and Derrick Henry from that famous Alabama photo before the national championship game, but Jalen Warren, pint size, Najee Harris, big, ripped, yoked up back. So Najee, I have them ranked back-to-back for a reason.
Yeah.
They get the job done in very different ways.
Yeah, I have Harris just ahead. This is Arthur Smith now, who's been the run-heaviest coach of the last couple of years, which should help Harris in theory, right?
Yeah.
They Falcons first in RB carries, first in RB rushing yards over the last 2 seasons. So Harris will be busy for sure. But then again, last year, Jalen Warren's not going to go away. He's going to have a big role in the passing game. He'll get some carries. He's effective. He scored 0.9 more fantasy points than Najee Harris, too, in what we expect to be similar roles. But I'm with you. I have Harris 2 spots ahead at 24 for Harris this week. So, yeah, it's a flex option.
This reminds me a little bit of when Zeke was kind of winding down in his first stint with the Cowboys, and we had Tony Pollard, who was like the clearly more exciting player, and sometimes it was annoying that he wasn't get more touches because Jalen Warren certainly is that, but it might be that Jalen Warren is best suited as like sort of that counterpunch at running back for the Steelers.
Big year for Harris. Contract year. He has a lot of motivation.
Both of them in a contract year.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
Love that. All right, Mike, let's talk about the Shadow Report. We got Drake London and George Pickens. First time unveiling wide receiver cornerback matchups here for week 1. Tell me about these matchups and how we need to be concerned about either Drake London. It feels like we're starting Drake London, but obviously the matchup still.
Yeah, I'd say we're going to start both of these guys, Drake London and George Pickens, but both are going to likely draw a one-on-one shadow in this game. Drake London's going to draw Joey Porter Jr., who started shadowing about midway through his rookie season last year and was outstanding against ones down the stretch last season. He'll be in the slot a little bit, so it's not full-time. You're still starting London, but one of his tougher matchups of the season. And on the other side, George Pickens is going to draw A.J. Terrell. Falcons were pretty good. A new system there, obviously, but they have Raheem Morris, who was outstanding with that very young, inexperienced Rams defense last year, so expect him to be good. But Terrell... that one's, we're actually going to see that one more because Pickens is almost exclusively on the perimeter. I don't know that if that changes in Arthur Smith's system. So those two are going to be going at it maybe 90% of the time in this game. So that's a tough assignment for George Pickens.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, E+ is where it is at. Get exclusive articles and insights from us and other top ESPN experts. Join E+ for the best fantasy tools and content in order to help win your league.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well done.
Who are you picking in this game?
Steelers. Just kidding. Falcons.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Falcons. Let's go.
I'm going with the Falcons in this one.
I like, by the way, a couple of their just kind of savvy defensive additions over last month. I thought it was like a below average defense. Now it's maybe an above average defense, like Matt Judon.
Just inject Matt Judon and Justin Simmons.
I know.
2 weeks of training camp.
Yeah. How do you do that? Like, that's unreal. It's just a great job by them. They're in. I mean, I know people say they're not in because they're a first round pick this year, but they're in. Like, they're otherwise all in. Yeah.
Let's talk Titans and Bears because this next game feels like it's just loaded with a bunch of fringe flex plays. People are going to have to be figuring out whether or not I want to start a bunch of these guys. Let's start with the running backs because you get DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, and Tajay Spears. How are you sussing out how you're going to use running backs in this game?
All right, so I'm going to approach them pretty similarly as the highest ranked of those 3 is 28th on my board this week, and the lowest ranked of those 3 is 36th.
Okay.
DeAndre Swift, I think, has a chance to move up that board when he's not playing what has been, and we'll see, entirely new system now and a new defensive coordinator. But the Titans, for a long time, have been excellent against running backs, in part because they have a guy named Jeffrey Simmons.
I have a number for you there. fewest fantasy points to running backs over the last 3 seasons. And it's consistent dominance over those 3 seasons because of, you mentioned it.
Yeah, so we'll see, obviously new scheme, but they did draft Tavondre Sweat in the 2nd round this year. I thought it was a reach in the real NFL draft, but if he does one thing really well, it's completely overwhelm offensive lineman. He's 360 pounds is Tavondre Sweat. So yes, a little lower this week on Swift than I anticipate being in most weeks. Very much looking forward to how they scheme him up in the passing game, an area he's so effective in. And on the Titans, I am going to flip a coin on Sunday morning. If I have a team that has both Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears, I'm going to draw a little S on one side for Spears and a little P on the other side for Pollard. And whichever side it lands on, I will be starting that if I have to choose between those 2 guys. If you're not choosing between them, Mike, I just sort of view them as, again, this is like the 3rd straight game. They're sort of like Chuba Hubbards.
Yeah, 34th and 35th on my board. So in a 12-team league, a flex, and a 10-team league, ideally not in your lineup.
Yeah, you're looking for somebody else rather than one of those 2 guys. What about the wide receivers? We know who we're starting in this one. DJ Moore, obviously, Calvin Ridley are getting the jump. Yep. But when you look at DeAndre Hopkins, when you look at Keenan Allen or Roma Dunze, are any of those guys, Mike, for you? Are you starting potentially any of those dudes this week?
Yeah, so I have Allen at 35th. Dunze, I'm not going to start this week at 58th. Again, would not surprise me if he has a big game, 7 targets, touchdown. Wouldn't shock me, but I don't know if we're there yet because they have DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. I will say this, though. We just talked about L'Jarius Sneed earlier. He's out on the Titans. Yep. Will he shadow in Tennessee? Will they use him the same way? That's the question. If he does, of course, he's going to be on DJ Moore. We're not benching DJ Moore. We're going to start him no matter what, but that could cause a little bit of a down game for him and open up targets for Keenan Allen, for example. That helps his cause. So, again, I would say Moore, lineup block, Keenan Allen, wide receiver 3/flex option. Odunze probably on my bench for week 1.
Hopkins, by the way, a question mark to play in this game. He suffered that knee injury, but he did practice in a limited capacity on Wednesday. So it sounds like there is at least a shot that he plays.
When you're picking this game, are you going with Bears or Titans in this
I'm going with the Bears. I'm not going to spoil too much of later, but I am on the Bears. And I will say this. There's not a player that I'm more looking forward to watching this weekend than Caleb Williams.
Really?
Special football player. Special football player who's got an incredible charisma about him. I think this is the beginning of something that is going to be not just long-lasting, but unlike anything the Bears have seen before at quarterback. They literally have never had a 4,000-plus yard passer and 30-plus passing touchdown quarterback. So a dawn of a new day is upon us in Chicago. I think Caleb Williams is a borderline top 10 option this week.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, like that.
He's in that conversation. Yeah, I'm excited too.
Now tied for my highest exposure quarterback in all of fantasy this year.
That's one of the crazy stats that I can't believe still exists in the NFL, that the Chicago Bears as a franchise have never had a 4,000-yard passer.
Hard to throw when it's windy.
It's, you know what? That's why they call it the Windy City.
They also might be building a dome soon in Chicago.
I heard that.
I've lost track of all the stadium updates because it seems like there have been a lot of them recently. But it's an amazing football town. And while traffic is the worst getting to Soldier Field, that is, and I've never been to a couple NFL stadiums, but that is just an unbelievably beautiful venue this time of the year, looking over the lake, still great weather out. God, I wish I were in Chicago.
This time of year, I think, is the key word there.
I mean, it's going to be cold in like 2 weeks in Chicago.
Yeah, you don't want that.
And we live in Connecticut, so we can, same, right? Big same, I've been waking up in like a sweatpants and sweatshirt already here in September, but
Fields gonna be Googling shoulder and stomach surgeons in the Chicago area.
Chicago,
that's fair enough. Yeah.
All right, we picked this one already. Everyone taking the Bears?
Yeah, we took the Bears. Yeah.
All right, I'm taking the Bears too. Broncos and Seahawks. This is another shadow report spot, Mike Clay. DK Metcalf. Obviously talking about him. I mean, you kind of mentioned it earlier. Like if DK is going to get shadowed, does it open up something potentially for Tyler Lockett or JSN?
Yeah, so here's the circumstance. Well-paid Pat Surtain. He's now the highest paid corner in NFL history. Got some money this week, and then this week he's going to have the assignment of shadowing DK Metcalf. These teams actually played week 1 in 2022. 2 years ago, remember that was
Russell Wilson's first game,
return game. Yep. In that game, DK had 7 targets and he caught them all. The problem was he only had 36 yards and no touchdowns. And if you look at his average depth of target, it was all short range. It was like 4.5 yards. They were just like, we're not going deep against Pat Surtain. It was all short range stuff. Didn't go great. So I expect the same thing. Surtain shadowed in almost every game last year. He'll be on Metcalf, barring a shocking development. That means a little bit of a downgrade for Metcalf. I still think you're going to start him. He's just too good to bench. Even in that game, he had double-digit fantasy points. However, to your point, Jackson Smith and Jigba, we're expecting a big leap forward this season, a much better matchup. I think this benefits him quite a bit. He's a good flex option, maybe a fringe wide receiver 3 in 12-team leagues. And then Tyler Lockett, we didn't really draft him to be a starter this year, but he's still there and he could benefit in this matchup as well. So a deep league flex option as well.
Jackson Smith and Jigba is what I would describe as kind of like a fulcrum player in fantasy this year, right? Like I could see so many different things happening with JSN. One of them is the obvious, which is that like, while DK Metcalf, while Tyler Lockett's getting a little bit older, like he's still on the team, right? And they gave him a pay cut this offseason to something like $14 million per year, right? So they didn't tell him like, this wasn't the Nick Chubb deal where he took a pay cut down to like $4 million. He's still making a lot of money and he's still like, he was still an effective player last season. So it's possible that JSN is still like squarely wide receiver 3 for Seattle going into this weekend. Or the 20th pick in the draft a year ago takes off. And some people, I know Matt Miller, our buddy, had him as the 5th best player in the entire class last season. Talking real NFL draft, and maybe he takes this big step forward. The Seahawks are also wearing their throwback uniforms this week.
Oh, love that.
So is that good for him or Jake Bobo?
It's good for Bobo. I do have a Bobo.
That feels like a Bobo touchdown spot to me.
You said it, not me. Fact or fiction, he was the first person to score a touchdown in the Seahawks throwback uniforms last year.
Yeah, that's fact, right?
Thank you. Yes, it is. Yeah.
I will say this, though. I think JSN's floor is pretty high because last year, as the clear 3 and just disappearing at times, he was 36th at receiver in catches last year. So you would expect that to expand in year 2. I wouldn't be surprised if he just goes off and catches 103 balls this year. Like he has a huge ceiling.
That's a great call right there, Mike. Yeah, I love that call of like a sneaky
sleeper for 100 catches. Yeah.
Yeah, I put him as a sleeper in the last few days. I'm sure you guys are in the same boat. People, hey, got any tips, any cheat sheets? And so I had my list of sleepers, and one of the pieces of feedback I got was like, yeah, JSN's a sleeper. And I'm like, dude, I mean,
yes, he is.
Relative to where he's being drafted.
I was going to say the wide receiver position is so deep that you're getting him pretty late in drafts by the time that you
drafted him a ton this year because I'm just higher than other people are. It's just he's there, and I'm like, man, I can't believe he's still here. I'll take him.
How about on the other side? Cortland Sutton, another one of those guys, and we've said this a bunch, but like a low end wide receiver 3, potential flex play if you like him there. But the real question for me is Javonte Williams.
Yeah, good one.
Are we looking at Javonte Williams as a guy that bouncing back last year? We had this conversation. We didn't really see him back to his full self. It didn't feel like he was completely unleashed. Week 1, taking on the Seahawks field. You trust in him?
There are two. I've got him as running back 23. So 24, excuse me. So he's a fringe starter in 10 team leagues, 12 team leagues, probably going to be started as well. Or probably will be started, I should say. There are two things that I'm watching. They're kind of obvious. One is like, how much of the work does he command? He played just under 50% of the snaps last season and was 15th in the NFL in touches. That was a lot of work for a guy who wasn't playing a ton of snaps.
Yep.
That's important to me, but also just eye test. This would be the player who perhaps the eye test matters to me more than any other in the entire NFL this weekend, right? Because what we saw last year was a player who looked like he was coming off of a massive knee reconstruction.
Correct.
Shafanya has pulled a million examples. I think the most notable in recent years for running backs have been Saquon Barkley and Dalvin Cook. The year after the ACL tear, the second year after, holy cow, I remember that guy. That's what I am hoping we see on Sunday, Mike, in Seattle.
I could not agree more. I just want to see the involvement of the other players as well. How much Jaleel McLaughlin's on the field. Audric. Estime, that's it. Yeah,
I like S time though. You should just say that.
That's S time. No, I'm a stickler for them, but sometimes I just space on it. Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to see how much they're involved because there's been hype around all these guys. Even Blake Watson got a little hype too, and he's on the roster. He might be a healthy scratch or play special teams. But I just want to see what that kind of distribution looks like. But also, we said this weeks ago, if they do waive Samaje Perine or cut Samaje Perine, that's probably a good sign for Javonte Williams, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah. I will just say this, sort of a fantasy thought, but not really. It's a fantasy thought because it ties to other players. I bet Bo Nix looks good on Sunday.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Bo looks really efficient. Really solid.
Yeah, I'm kind of fascinated by Denver this year because they got more out of the passing game than you probably realize. A ton of passing touchdowns last year. Sean Payton's obviously a great coach. But on paper, that team doesn't look good on either side of the football. And I'm like, man, am I just underestimating Sean Payton by being really low on Denver this year? But if, again, a big part of it's just going to be quarterback. I mean, if Bo Nix is the real deal, it's going to look silly, just like the Houston projections looked last year, because how often is a rookie quarterback as good as CJ Stroud? Almost never.
Yeah.
But we'll see. One of them's gonna be elite, at least.
I'm not saying this because I want Bo's tenure to go like Mac Jones did, but like Mac was very good as a rookie.
Yeah.
Now it was like set up. It was the perfect setup, right? It was like really well coached.
Yep.
Good offensive line that year. No superstar weapons. Remember, they spent all that money on free agency. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith and Kendrick Bourne, et cetera, right? And It wasn't dominant by any stretch, but it was good enough. And I think Bo could have that kind of season, which Mac was not hitting fantasy relevance frequently, but I think that like how we feel about the offense in general might look a little different come Sunday night.
That is kind of the concern, though, is he's not surrounded by star players like Caleb Williams is, for example. You're just like, all right, he has Courtland Sutton, and then a lot of question marks there, including, I mean, he doesn't have Jones had the 2 tight ends. He doesn't really have that. We don't know what we're getting out of Greg Dulcich. Adam Troutman does a lot of blocking. Yeah. Receiver depth is a major concern. Yeah, I mean, the O-line's O-line's decent, but I don't know. That's kind of a question for me. I mean, last year they had an absurd running back target share. Yeah. An absurd. It was like almost 40%. That's where like all the balls are going. It probably will under Sean Payton. That's good. Yeah. More good news for Javonte Williams. But I do worry about that with Bo Nix. He's already going to go through the bumps in the road as a rookie quarterback, and then he has question marks at the skill position. So probably a little more cautious, but they just really need him to be okay. He just needs to play okay, and that'll be fine.
Just needs him to play okay. I guess,
but I just don't see. I just don't. From a fantasy perspective, I just don't see it.
Yeah, no. That's what I'm saying too. Is like I think it's not fantasy relevant for him. I think it's for the people around him who could be positively impacted. I
just don't know who they are. Like, good for Sutton. I mean, I love Sutton. I drafted him a ton. Maybe Javonte, but I don't know if we're gonna have much else from.
I was thinking Quinn Miners in my guards only league, but
hey, there you go.
Maybe Marvin Mims, I guess. Yeah,
Mims, who apparently is not a starter anymore according to the depth chart.
Don't love that. I mean, a 2nd-round draft pick last year.
It was valuable in Scott Fishbowl though, because he's going to return a lot of yards.
That's true. That's where it works out. Let's talk about this. You taking the Seahawks? You taking the Broncos? I'm taking the Seahawks.
Seahawks is who I'm taking, especially in those. I don't know, man. The Bobo factor.
Throwbacks, yeah.
Seahawks are. I like some things they did this offseason. They're a solid team. I'm taking them. Yeah.
All right,
love it.
Raiders and Chargers. Here's my question for the Raiders and Chargers. I think the only people that I'm considering really starting for the Los Angeles Chargers is one of the 2 running backs, either J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards. Is there Mike, do you have a strong push in either direction, or is this kind of like you're splitting hairs here?
I guess splitting hairs. I mean, Gus Edwards never finished top 30 in points per game. It would not shock me if he had 18 carries in a close game and scores a rushing touchdown. So, but he's not going to be involved in the passing game where J.K. Dobbins maybe. And honestly, J.K. Dobbins is younger and should be more spry in theory if he's back from the injury. I want it to be him, but I don't want to really use either guys. Also, Raiders have not been great against the run, but they got Christian Wilkins up front now. I mean, that's a difference maker for sure and could affect someone like Edwards running between the tackles. So if I'm breaking a tie, I'm going to lean Dobbins because he's just more versatile, but I would prefer to avoid.
That defense is going to be nasty.
You think so? I think they're kind of a boom bust group. Like they have a few stars and then they have a lot of question marks.
I think they're going to be excellent. I think the coaching is terrific out there. I thought they play. There might not be a defense that believes more in itself than the Raiders do.
Really?
I really think they're going to be a top 10 defense this year.
Well, interesting.
What does the Chargers offensive line look like? Got J.C. Latham this offseason.
Joe Alt.
Sorry, Joe Alt.
They have a lot of investment there. I mean, a potentially excellent tackle duo in Joe Alt and obviously Rashawn Slater. They moved as a result of drafting Joe Alt. They put Trey Pipkins at right guard. Bradley Bozeman signed as the center this offseason. And then a couple of years ago, they drafted a guard in the 1st round as their starting left guard. So that's pretty good right there.
They got a pretty good offensive line. I mean, we expect Jim Harbaugh to run a lot. I'm very interested to see. I'm hopeful that we see a rejuvenated J.K. Dobbins this year. It's just tough to be able to trust him in week 1 without having to game first.
This could be a game decided by Daniel Carlson or Cameron Dicker, the kicker, who's got some big money.
A bunch of money. Yeah, secured the bag.
That's I think the well said. Like, well, let's just see how week 1 goes for the distribution for these guys. That's especially the case for the Chargers at wide receiver and running back.
Who are you taking in this game? Field Raiders or Chargers?
I got the Raiders.
Mike Clay.
Man. This one is in I think I have the Chargers. They're home.
Yes,
this one.
They are home.
I'm gonna lean Harbaugh in his first game. I'm going Chargers.
I'm doing the same thing.
The Tom Telesco quarterback, the now GM of the Raiders.
Yeah.
With the Chargers GM.
Boy, that'll be something to see.
Justin Herbert at the end of the day.
All right, what about Vikings and Giants? This is going to be our last one, and then we got a few more things we're going to talk about here after this. But Vikings and Giants, big question for me. Jordan Addison, can you trust him as a flex play this week, Michael Clay?
I think that's fine. I mean, it's still a good matchup here against the Giants, who are returning their same perimeter corners from last year. Dory Jackson, who just signed, re-signed. Who knows if he's going to be a full go in this game? And Deontay Banks maybe makes a leap this year in year 2, but he really struggled last season. So should be a good matchup, but we don't know with Sam Darnold there. We don't know what this offense is going to look like. So it's enough there where I have him 42nd, Addison, deep league flex option, but not a must start.
If he plays, he is dealing with an ankle injury right now that was suffered during training camp. Sounds like he's got a shot. He did practice on Wednesday, but definitely amongst the injuries to monitor going into the week. I will say this, we're starting him, but a fascinating weekend for Justin Jefferson. Just as I expect the target share to be excellent. We'll see what the quarterback play looks like, but I don't know how many players can be qualified as a significant value when going in the first 8 picks, but Justin Jefferson could prove to be the best value of any of the first 8 picks because the highest scoring player in fantasy is within his range of outcomes.
Absolutely. Without question. I'm not worried about the Sam Darnold situation. I may feel more worried after week 1, but heading into the season, knowing what he did last year with quarterbacks not named Kirk Cousins, he was still a monster.
Yeah, and the volatility is different for him versus players that are being drafted ahead of him for sure. But yes, I think Justin Jefferson could prove a value. He was the number 1 player in fantasy going into last season.
How about a dark horse here? No TJ Hawkinson. Is Johnny Munt someone that if you waited at the tight end spot or you're in a super deep league, you could potentially throw a dart at in week 1?
The latter part of that, the super deep league, maybe. Yeah, he did play 77% of the snaps in the one game that TJ Hawkinson missed entirely last season. That was week 18. In the game prior to that, when Hawkinson got hurt, he kind of took over for Hawkinson, and he was productive in those 2 games. He's a solid depth level tight end in real life, and I think a top 15 to 20 player in fantasy.
I think I'm 18th this week. He was top 12 both of those weeks, though, last year to finish the season. So, and again, that was post Kirk Cousins, and Jefferson was playing. So
yeah,
he'll be there. Jalen Naylor, keep an eye on him. Super deep sleeper. If you're in a very deep dynasty league,
wide receiver for
they
the
seem to
Vikings.
like him a lot. A lot of injuries. He's actually questionable right now, but it sounds like he just locked down that 3 job early on, and they like him a lot. So it's a deep sleeper. Just throwing him out there.
And not a lot, unfortunately, for the Giants. Obviously, we're starting Malik Neighbors if we have him, and Devin Singletary kind of falls into that same bucket that we've mentioned. A lot of different running backs
in that.
We didn't talk about Singletary a whole lot this summer. And I will just say this, is that I don't think the ceiling is massive for Devin Singletary by any stretch. The Giants really like that player, though. Like the things to say about him, I'll be curious because here's what I want to know about Devin Singletary. As you guys remember at the beginning of last season, he was behind Dameon Pierce from that Texans depth chart.
Yeah.
Then he got going and kind of took over the starting job. He had a game in which I think he had like 31 carries and 0 catches. Then as things kind of settled in down the stretch, he was doing a little bit of both, like handling plenty of carries, but also getting some passing game involvement. I wonder how the Giants plan to deploy him because their depth is obviously very thin behind him. You would think he's going to be involved both as a runner and a receiver.
Yeah, no doubt. You're going to see probably some Tyrone Tracy who should be in on returns. Eric Gregg could be in on returns as well. So they have nobody that's really jumping off the page, and I think he'll be 65, 70% of the snaps in week 1 would not surprise me. But again, even when he was a featured player down the stretch, we weren't ranking him like 6th at running back. Like he was getting some like the most volume in the NFL, and he was just solid, from a fantasy perspective. So I say he's a flex option. Maybe he'll flirt with back end RB2 numbers if that offense is a little better than expected. He's just he's frankly the most reliable player at running back in the NFL. He's been the only guy to miss no games over the last 3 seasons that's played as a starter. So I love the player. He's awesome. I loved him coming into the league. He just continues to be a really solid, again, from a fantasy perspective, borderline RB2.
All right. Who are you taking in this one is the real question. Giants or Vikings? I'm going with the Vikings in this one.
I got the Vikings as well, and they need this because the schedule is brutal.
It's tough.
Yeah. Right after that.
I'll go Vikings. I'll believe in Kevin O'Connell here, and also like the Giants are my 32nd ranked team this year. So,
I'm sure the fans are treating me very well.
Love that.
If they start 1-0, though, I'm going to hear about it.
You know what? Giants fans, I actually think are fairly level-headed about where their season is going this year because they saw what it looked like. Like I feel like Hard Knocks just got them mad. Because obviously Hard Knocks dove deep into the things like Saquon Barkley's departure and not getting one of those top 3 quarterbacks this year. So, I just can't wait for the Malik Neighbors show on Sunday, at least.
I cannot. That is a guy that I am very excited to be able to see what he's going to look like as the wide receiver 1.
Agreed.
All right. We're going to talk about some more games tomorrow, but we're not done yet.
Not done.
Because I want to be able to pick our playoff teams. Let's pick our playoff teams and our Super Bowl matchups.
Let's go.
This is going to be a ton of fun. I've got my 7 playoff teams for each conference, guys.
Okay, you started off then. Go for it.
I'm going to start in the AFC. This is my 7 in the AFC, okay? I've got the Bills, Ravens, Texans, and Chiefs. With also having the
Dolphins. Winning the division?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Bills, Ravens,
Texans, and Chiefs.
Okay.
With the Dolphins, Bengals, and Jets as the wild card.
Oh, okay. I think that's similar to mine. I'm not as high in the Bills, but should we go through AFC first?
Yeah. Give me your
so
AFC.
my AFC, I'll give you seed numbers. I'm going to go
Overachiever.
Okay, all right,
my
Mike.
reveal here is gonna blow the doors off this. You ready? 7 seed is the Browns, 6 is the Dolphins, 5 is the Bengals, so they're the wild cards.
Okay.
Division winners: 4 seeds the Texans, 3 is the Ravens, 2 is the Chiefs, 1 seed in the AFC.
Is the Jets?
New York Jets.
So the Jets are the 1 seed, and the Bills don't even make the playoffs.
Bills are the first team out. Bills miss the playoffs. Jets win the division. That's my take this year.
All right, what about you,
We
Field?
have a lot of crossover here. I have the division winners as such: the Dolphins,
Yep.
the Ravens, the Texans, and the Chiefs.
Okay.
My 3 wild cards are the Jets, the Bills, and the Bengals. So we have the same field, Daniel and I do, with different division winners, it sounds like. Mike.
Some of us go out on a limb. It's all right.
Browns. No, it's okay. Well, okay. So do you want to just go through the entirety of the AFC field?
Yeah, who are you taking then in the AFC as your Super Bowl champion?
The Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay.
As your Super Bowl champion or AFC champion?
I want
AFC champion.
My AFC.
Yeah, yes, correct.
My
AFC champion.
My AFC
Yes.
champion
AFC
will be
champion.
the Jets.
The Jets. Well, I'm taking the Baltimore Ravens.
All right.
All right, we got 3 different AFC teams. I like
All right.
this. That'll be fun.
You guys taking layups? I got the
All right. And then let's do NFC. Field, why don't you lead it off with the NFC since you went last?
My 7 NFC playoff teams. I'll do division winners included as well.
Okay.
Eagles win the division.
Okay.
Lions win the division. The Falcons win the division, and the 49ers win their division. The 3 wildcard teams are the Green Bay Packers, Los Angeles Rams, and the Bears.
no Cowboys in there.
Wow.
Cowboys.
Wow.
Wow.
Interesting. Very
All right.
different take for me. Okay, so I'll do what you guys say. I'll do the divisions. This one's not as controversial. 1 seed 49ers, 2 seed Cowboys, 3rd Detroit Lions, 4th Atlanta Falcons. So they're the division winners. Wild cards in order: Eagles, Packers, Bears. First team out is Seattle, and I hated to do it.
Wow, no Rams either, huh?
No Rams. I think the Rams fall down this year. Remember, no Aaron Donald there too. I'm still worried about them in a lot of ways. Defense started to plummet as the year went on last year. A lot of personnel issues there. But the Seahawks were the one that actually hurt. I wanted to get them in there because I like what they've done.
All right. So my division winners are the Lions, the Cowboys, the Falcons, and the 49ers, with my 3 wildcard teams being the Packers, the Eagles, and the Rams.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yep. So we have pretty similar ones.
Similar-ish.
I got Bears in there. You have the
I got the
Cowboys.
Cowboys.
Yep. All right.
All right.
And
Super
Mike's
Bowl
got, you
picks.
don't have the Cowboys at all. And Mike, you've got the Cowboys as the 2 seed.
Yeah, I still think they're good. I think that's why they had a quiet offseason is like they lost some players, but they had a really good roster and they're strong where you need to be strong, right? They also have like Trevon Diggs coming back from an injury. You know, like I think that team is still good. As long as the O-line is serviceable, I think they're going to have another big
Have
season.
you guys seen how Bill Belichick has like a ton of different media jobs now and he's on Instagram?
I did see he's on Instagram.
What's he going to do when he gets hired by the Cowboys as their interim coach in week 6? He's going to say, like, is there an out clause and all of it? What's the buyout? What's the buyout on all those deals?
I'm sure he's covered.
All right. So,
Who's coming out of the NFC for you?
Niners.
I'm taking the Lions.
the Lions.
I'm
Let's
shocked
go.
by that.
I'm taking the Lions as well.
Are you really?
Yeah, sure
I
am.
love it.
Yep.
Field Yates.
By the way,
So we got Lions, Chiefs,
Yep.
Niners, Jets, and you have
Lions, Ravens.
Lions. All right. So who we picking? All right. I'm bringing the score.
Of course,
You know I'm bringing
yeah.
the score here.
Of course you are.
Okay. So in May, I wrote an article,
Yep.
and it was like, why the Jets will win the Super Bowl this
Yep.
year. I'm standing by it. They're stacked. Jets win it 25-22 over the Niners.
I love it. 25. Wasn't that the exact score of last year's Super Bowl?
Was it really?
Was it?
I don't know. That's just, I actually, you know what it is? This week I have the Niners beating the Jets because it's in San Fran, 25-22. So I was like, come Super Bowl time, it's going to flip.
Oh, it was like the.
Wow.
All right, who you got?
Okay. I'm taking the Lions over the Ravens because, of course, I am. Also, this is the year for the Lions to be able to do it. We put so many things together.
Totally.
Got them 27-19.
I got Chiefs over the Lions in the Super Bowl. So the 3-peat, the first time ever. Do you guys have an MVP pick for this year?
Ooh, MVP. Well, if the Jets are this good, Aaron Rodgers will be in that conversation. I guess I kind of have to go Aaron Rodgers, right?
Okay.
Like if they're going to be that good,
That's a
Brock
great
Purdy, I
question.
guess. Like,
Josh Allen for me.
I think I'm going to go with Jordan Love.
Ooh, all right. So you've
I like-
covered your bases here.
yeah. All right. The only thing I'll say is like, you don't even have to win in the division. I don't think Love wins MVP without winning.
Well, I have Josh Allen winning MVP and not winning the division. That could be like an 11-6.
That's tough, yeah.
Yeah, but like the roster depth could be revealed.
That's a fair
quickly
point,
in
though.
Buffalo.
That's a
Like,
fair
you're
point.
like,
It's
So like Allen didn't win it last year, even though he was so great because they were like not in the playoffs for so long, and they rallied, but it was still like he's not really there.
You know what? You're right. If I'm going to have the Lions going all the way to the Super Bowl, then I got to take Jared Goff. As
There you
the
go.
MVP.
Let's go.
You
I
have
like
to.
that.
I might
I
as
like
well do the
it.
trifecta with it, right?
So we have Michigan Men. It's our great fantasy league and group thread, and Josh is going to love that.
Oh yeah. Our buddy Josh.
We have one skeptic of Jared Goff in
He's
our league.
very much
Sorry to
not.
out you, Josh.
By the way, I love how like I said Aaron Rodgers, and it's like, oh man, that feels like a reach, but also he's won 2 of the last 4 MVPs.
He's done it 4
crazy.
times. He's like one of the 3 players ever to do it that many times.
Yeah, unreal.
All right, we're going to be back tomorrow. We got even more games we're going to dive into. We're also going to recap Thursday Night Football, preview Friday Night Football, as well as the rest of Sunday. It's going to be a ton of fun. And thank you so much for watching Fantasy Focus Football, presented by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Eagles Packers Friday night. Oh, can't wait for that one.
It'll be tough to get an L right off the bat for you, Mike.